Stakeholder.
In gambling, an independent party with whom each of those who make a wager deposits the money or counters wager.
A person with an interest or concern in something, especially a business.
In emergency management, any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival and recovery of a given community. You.
Welcome to Stakeholder Prepping.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you, are the stakeholder in your own survival. We are your hosts. My name is Chris.
And I'm AC. And today we're going to do what we hope are, I guess, one of many Q&A and feedback episodes. We had Joe Flowers on, it seems like forever ago now, and we had some really good questions come in. We were teasing the Q&A episode, but it was hard to get Joe on the phone a couple of times to answer your questions. He is a very busy guy, and he's out in the bush and doing all kinds of very cool bushcrafter stuff. So we had to wait till he was back home to get some answers out of him. But thank you, Joe, very much. I'm sure he is listening.
Yes, and when we sent these questions to him, he was mid-trip on the Swanee River and still managed to kind of get back to us. And so it did take a little bit longer than we were originally planning, but we are getting the Joe Flowers episode questions answered because we did promise it a few episodes back. And we're going to read a few really cool reviews that we've received unsolicited, and we're also going to be giving away a few Grim Workshop Joe Flower signature cards at the end of the episode. So listen for your name, and you may have some goodies coming to you.
Yeah, and before you just totally tune out and write this one off, there will be actionable intel in this episode. We've still got some cool stuff to talk about. We're answering some solid questions for listeners, and yeah, we're delivering some solid actionable intel.
And before we get into the Q&A here, I think that's really the core of what we do is provide you with solid, timeless, actionable intelligence that you can apply as you see fit. And that's kind of the whole point behind prepping, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We want to be able to provide that solid, actionable intel, every week after week. And Chris and I have said this before that it's not super easy, man. We're putting in time. We're trying to drum up guests. We're doing the research. We're investing a lot of money in cool giveaways and stuff like that. So, and it's paying off, not financially, obviously. But this is still a giant money suck for us. But but it's paying off by what I mean is people are enjoying it. They are getting useful, actionable intel out of it, and we're getting some really amazing unsolicited feedback, better than I could really imagine when we started this. Thinking about where we are now and only been doing this for what, Chris, it's been 26 weeks, I guess, or something.
Yeah, right at 6 months.
Yeah,
So
right.
this is kind of the halfway of our first year.
Yeah, that's right. That's you know what? I didn't even think about that we put it together like that. That's perfect for the for kind of the Q&A and the reviews and that kind of stuff. That's perfect. You're right. This is the halfway point. So, yeah, we've had some really good reviews. We've read a few before, but I think we've gotten a couple recently that are really awesome. So yeah, Chris, do you want to read a couple of these that kind of came in unsolicited?
Yeah, these are a couple of the comments that were really heartwarming. We got feedback from, and we did not go out and ask for any of these. The first one
No.
comes from Paul. Paul says, "Love the podcast, guys. We have an acronym we use in our household. It's SIFS. Save it for survival. I've been prepping one way or another for 30 plus years and been making sure my kids understand the importance of it as well. I recently got put onto your podcast, so I'm only at the bartering episode. I drive trucks, so I like to listen to it as I'm driving. By the way, I love the 30 carbine also. There's your plug, AC. Bought mine at Woolworth department store in 1990, I think for about $120. All Winchester with bayonet lug. Never cut myself with it though. LOL, love the show and keep up the good work.
that's that's awesome. $120. I imagine he's talking about an M1 and gosh, $120 at a Woolworth. That's amazing.
If I could find any firearm for $120 other than like a High Point, a Phoenix, or some other absolute junk, I'd be thrilled.
I think I bought a Lorson once for about $80 or something. Yeah, and I'm surprised that didn't blow up. But I was gonna say High Point is probably the only thing you could get these days.
I think there's one that's on my list. I haven't gotten it yet, but brand new from the factory. It is a 12 gauge break action single stage shotgun, and I want to add that to my collection. I think brand new from the factory, it's like 110.
Yeah, like a Rossi. I have one of those. I've bought the kit a couple of times where, yeah, you get like, I guess we'll call it the lower, and then it comes with like a 12 gauge, a 20 gauge, and a 410 or something like that. And yeah, I have a couple of those, and I think that is a really good one. That just standard break open 12 gauge. You're right. You can still probably get those for somewhere around $120. But man, an M1 carbine for in 1990, that wasn't that long ago, was it?
Right?
It's that's
It
that's
seems like it's just
crazy.
flown by since then.
I don't know if I've ever been to a Woolworths either. I don't know where Paul is from, but yeah, I don't know if I've ever been into one of those. But that was nice of Paul. And I want to know the Save It for Survival. Do they just say SIFS? That doesn't roll off. Is it just SIFs? Do you think they just say SIFs?
Maybe? I don't
SIFs.
know. Paul, let us know.
Paul, let
Is
us
it, do you
know.
just say
Save
it
it.
as one word, or do you
Yeah.
actually spell out the acronym, or
S-
do you call it
Yeah.
something
I would
else?
like to know. Save it for survival, but that's pretty cool. I do like that. So anyway, and truck drivers, man, they're keeping the world running. Without truck drivers, we talk about this sometimes that your average grocery store has what, like 3 days of food in it.
Yep, if that. And if
So
it's not restocked, replenished, something happens right before that truck gets there, you might be tapping into your emergency supplies a little bit earlier than you thought you would.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think if you are not hungry right now, you can thank a truck driver probably. So
Speaking of which, I've got beef sticks in the fridge that are calling my name. Some smoked sausage beef sticks
oh,
that, yeah, I'm waiting
nice.
on that.
Nice. My buddy just did they got back from an elk hunt recently and he brought over some like elkaroni sticks and they are absolutely amazing.
Nice. Very nice.
What else do you got?
So this one is from Kathy. And Kathy says, "Hi, I've been binge listening to your podcast since I found it last week. Thank you for being down to earth, knowledgeable, and not mansplaining. I think your demographic is generally men, but I think there are quite a few women listening as well. I have some of the items you talk about already, but I would like to hear about new stuff. I really enjoyed the pocket dump episode, and I'm looking forward to your gun episode. Thanks for being awesome." Kathy, I will tell you the first edition of the gun episode is coming relatively soon.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to tell you exactly when, but fairly soon here.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a few gun episodes. Not all the time. You can, if you want to just hear people talk about guns, there's 1,000 podcasts for that. But I think we're gonna try to put our own spin on it. And it's funny to her point. It's amazing, one, how many people have told us they binge listen, because that's crazy. Like, I just couldn't listen to myself talk that much. And I really think that's awesome that we are entertaining and engaging enough that people are actually binge listening, because we've heard that more than once from people that they found us and they're just going to listen to all of them straight through. And I'll tell you that the audio quality, got a lot better in the last handful of episodes. But that's
Finally learned some tricks and tips
we
for
we figured
editing.
it we figured it out, and Chris is getting really good at editing. And secondly, to her point about our demographic being women, this is the thing that's crazy to me, is that we do get some demographic Big Brother data from a couple of the services that host podcasts. And believe it or not, it's not quite 50%, but it's incredibly close to nearly half women that listen to us, which is
Yeah, we actually have it's close to a 60-40 split.
that's That's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it really is. And yeah, to Kathy's point that she's like, hey, most of your demographic is probably men, and you would be surprised how many people have reached out to us and said, you know, I found you guys, and I'm getting my husband to listen to you or my boyfriend to listen to you. And yeah, I think that I mean, we're not trying to mansplain, but I think we do break stuff down just enough, and trying to appeal to everybody is kind of tough, like we realize that some people out there are going to be experts in the thing we're talking about this week. And I apologize to those people when we do break it down a little too far. But on the flip side of that, if we just kept it high level, then people that want to know more about that topic probably aren't going to get everything out of that episode. So it's a bit of a tightrope to walk with us where we're trying to deliver solid, actionable intel and not just give you totally high level info, but not just get so specific into part numbers and stuff. It is a bit of a tightrope to walk.
It is a challenge. It's a rewarding challenge for me. It's definitely something I did not realize how much time this was going to take. This is a full-on second job.
For sure. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the hardest part for me at least is doing the research to get it right, because you can just plug something into Google and get that, you know, uh the AI overview, and that's not always accurate. I've read plenty of them
Yeah.
where it's completely wrong. So you have to do a little bit more digging. You have to actually follow links at the bottom of the Wikipedia pages and you know, read into the actual articles or the sources. So there's a lot that goes into it, but we
Y-
definitely appreciate it, Kathy.
Yeah, and we were talking about that recently that we have listened to some prepper podcasts ourselves where they're just reading from the Wikipedia page somewhere. And we're trying to not do that. We're trying to provide multiple sources for information. We're trying to actually um, do the research ourselves. And in many cases, we're actually doing the exercise ourselves, right? Like you can find Chris on our YouTube page breaking down uh, actual honest to God land navigation, like using the tools you would use to navigate. And that's not something you see on a lot of these sort of preparedness podcasts where they would just say, yeah, you can get a map and you can get a compass and you can figure out how to get from one point to another. And that's kind of where they leave it. And we're going to take it that step further every single time and try to break that down to the most the just the nuts and bolts of it every time. So yeah, it takes a lot of research. It's amazing. It truly is a full second time job. I can't believe how much time, money, and effort it really has taken, because we're definitely not the most professional people out there either. Like I can't imagine how long
Hell
it
no.
takes to I can't imagine how long it takes to put together a real podcast, because holy crap, this is full time.
But speaking of which, do we want to drop our cards right now?
Yeah, that's cool. This is something, and by the way, both Kathy and Paul, I want to say Paul got one of these, and I don't think Kathy did because hers came in earlier, but we have been working on, I mean, we'll call it, I don't know, like a tactical business card, really. It's just a clear plastic card with our Spotify code and our website and all the different ways you get in contact with us. But it's got kind of a cool Compass Rose navigation tool on it and a couple of companion tools for a flashlight. And I guess I won't give it away too much, but Chris is going to do a cool video probably by the time this episode drops, and we'll add our link to our YouTube stuff like we usually do, and it'll be in the episode overview. But anybody that emails us and asks for any of the times we're doing cool giveaways, like with stickers or stakeholder prepping, handcuff keys from Shomer Tech, or obviously if you need a can opener, please don't use your knife to open up your can of Dentimore chili or beans. Let me give you a P38 or P51 can opener.
And
Anybody
if
that
you
emails us.
do, I would say if you do use our specialty code to order a map from MyTopo, let us know and we will send you one of these cards because they are actually pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they are a companion to the MyTopo map. That's right. So anyway, we'll be sending those out with anytime we do any of the giveaway stuff. We'll drop those in there. So that's kind of cool. We are still investing every day in the podcast, not just the time and effort, but the money too. So along those lines, Chris, we had
We
I
got
think
one more review and then a bunch of questions that came in for Joe and us.
okay, cool, go for it.
So this review came from Matt. It says, "Hey guys, great episode. I definitely have a few items to add to my bag after that one. Always building and adjusting that gear. I've definitely mentioned the pod a few times because it's not doomsday zombie silliness, but practical and real life. Anyone can take something away from the info. Thanks, guys. Keep up the great work." We don't get any further than what you guys are willing to put out. So spread the word. We definitely appreciate it, Matt. Help us grow and help us get more guests that are going to help with your burning questions, help us get more awareness out there, and let's try to make everybody their own stakeholder.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. I didn't even see Matt's there. Yeah, that's awesome because it is funny. Are there podcasts that just talk about zombie apocalypses all the time?
I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure I've heard one or two that do.
yeah, okay. Well, that's yeah. I guess that we're still in the middle of the Walking Dead craze, maybe, but the Doomsday thing too. And it's funny, we both spend a lot of time on the socials, way more than I would like to, just interacting with people, trying to get the word about the podcast, and this often happens where you will find somebody posting something about oh I wish there was somebody that would talk about sanitation or land navigation. I'd like to learn more about that. And I'm always like, oh hey, we actually did an episode on that, and you could listen to that. But there are a lot of people out there that wouldn't be great listeners for us because all they're focused on is this absolute apocalyptic Teotihuacan event every single day. And I just couldn't imagine living your life thinking that every single day there is definitely going to be an end of the world as we know it. Like that kind of suck. I don't
That
know.
would be exhausting to
It would
me.
it would be exhausting. Like
And if that happens, you have to be willing to fight back for your own survival. I mean, if it's weighing down on you that much, are you just going to give up and just call it good? Like, I had a
right.
good 24 years, I had a
Yeah.
good 38 years,
We
whatever
had
it
a good
happens to be.
run. I had a
Yeah.
good run. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's so funny that, and obviously I think that, if you're prepared for everything, you are prepared for anything. But to just focus on that one event and not all the other things that according to your own personal risk matrix are so much more likely to happen than you know nuclear proliferation or something. I don't know. It's just crazy that we do bump into people like that. But that's cool. No, thanks Matt, because you're right. We don't focus on doomsday. Um we focus on you know blowing out a tire on the way to work. That's just unfortunately that's just more likely to happen to you.
And it really is, but being prepared for a little bit of everything keeps you well rounded, keeps you stable, and keeps you surviving. So it all helps.
Yeah, that's right. So, to the questions we had put out when we had the Joe Flowers episode, we said, "Hey, anybody who has questions for Joe or for us, kick them over, and we're going to give away some stuff." We picked kind of the best of the best here. I think the top 3 will get a signature Joe Flowers card, but you know what? Everybody gets something. So, we'll kick in our new our stakeholder prepping little tactical navigation cards there, P38 can openers, the stakeholder prepping handcuff keys that we've got still from Shomer Tech from our Christmas episode, and we've got some pretty cool stickers as well. So I think anybody that doesn't get a Joe Flowers card here will give cool stuff to every one of these people anyway.
Absolutely. Do we want to go ahead and jump into some questions?
Yeah, go for it. I'll let you read them if you don't mind, Chris.
Yeah, that works for me. And some of these we were able to get answers back from Joe. Some of them
Right.
came in a little late, so we didn't get the answers from Joe, but we will still answer them. So this first one is from Megan, and she asks, so the scenario is end of society. The whole world has experienced no grid, no satellite, no communication. All vehicles are disabled. You and your family have no outside communication from your home to anyone else except neighbors on your street. It's hurricane season, and a Cat 4 is heading directly towards you, but you have no warning until the weather changes severe. How would you go about protecting your home, gear, family, etc., without a pre warning of a hurricane, tornado, wildfire, or flood?
That's heavy. That's heavy shit right there. That's like the Star Trek Kobayashi Maru no win scenario. I think, man. I don't know. What do you? How would you answer that, Chris?
This is a tough one, but I'm going to follow the wildlife.
Okay.
If
Uh,
all of the wildlife is bedding down, if they are trying to nest and make sure that they are secure, that's my first indication. If they are trying to bail and you see flocks of birds that don't normally flock, or everything is taking off at the same time and heading in one direction, I'm going to be following that to my best ability.
yeah, that's really good. And I will say that along that let nature tell you what to do route. Um, Something you can get right now, very inexpensive, that does not require any technology, is having a barometer in your home. And I can tell you that you are not going to get you're not going to get a hurricane if that barometer is at standard pressure. So just like the animals, you would see it coming. So having a little analog barometer, you see them oftentimes like in a 3-pack, or it'll be like a thermometer, a hydrometer, and a barometer. I have one of those. It's an analog piece of gear that gives you standard pressure. And part
You're
of that
going to
is
have
just
to pay a little bit more attention to it if all of a
right.
sudden everything goes down,
That's
but
yep.
it doesn't run
Yeah.
on electricity, does it?
Right. Hey, you're not watching the TV right now in Megan's scenario. I'm just kind of hanging out watching the barometer, I guess. But no, but you know what I mean. Like, and maybe that's just because I'm an aviator and I dig that stuff. But yeah, if I see um, if I see the barometer changing significantly and you're down into the 27, 26, 25 inches of mercury, then I would say, oh yeah, shit, we could have some severe weather. And that's kind of like the, watching nature, like you said, Chris. So you can see it coming even without technology if you know where to look. So um, that's one thing. And I like your idea of following the wildlife. The other point that Megan made here is that you don't have outside communication, but you do have the neighbors on your street. And we talk about this a little bit with just community, but you should know which one of your neighbors has the hurricane shelter, and you should be friends with that neighbor unless you are that neighbor. So, this is prepping. I would say that when all of this stuff happens that Megan just described, that is not the time to try to figure out which one of your neighbors is your friend and has a hurricane shelter, right?
I could not agree more there because if you are the only one on your street that's prepared and that word gets out, you're going to have a whole lot of house guests that you were not planning on.
You're going to have other issues besides that. So yeah, this is a pre-planning question, really. Is that I see what Megan's trying to do, or she's trying to pitch it like there's no way to plan for this. But even in this scenario where you only have interaction with the neighbors on your street, that's you should already have that group. You should have that group of neighbors. You should have that community. You should know those people. You should know who's prepared for what. And the time to come up with a plan for all of these things that Megan listed out is now. Don't try to go meet your neighbors as this Cat 4 hurricane is heading directly towards you.
I think that's probably a little late on the planning cycle.
Right. Yeah.
So
Oh,
the next question came from Hunter,
okay.
and his question is, what one item without a blade, such as a machete, knives, etc., are excluded? What one item without a blade does he most recommend for a beginner bushcrafter? And this was directed at Joe. Joe's answer was a ferro rod. With it, you have to learn toolcraft, firecraft, and confidence with your hands.
That's good. Yeah. So the ferro rod, I mean, obviously starting a fire anywhere. So I was like literally today years old when I realized that a ferro rod is different than like flint. I always thought like back in the Boy Scout days that it was the same thing, but it is absolutely not. A ferro rod is made out of, I can't pronounce it. It's like ferrocurium or something. It is a chemical makeup, right? And
Yep.
it's it's a different thing than just flint. Ferro rods are pretty cool because it is like almost uh, like a flinty, sparky thing and magnesium together. So they burn very, very hot. You get an amazing amount of strikes out of them. But yeah, I like what Joe said. Yeah, then you actually have to learn toolcraft, and you have to learn firecraft. Firecraft is something that I think everybody can learn a little better because it's not just this super nice controlled environment all the time where you don't have wind and you know, maybe don't have dry material. Firecraft is something that I think everybody could do better at, and it's something everybody could learn.
See, for me, I think it would be 550 cord.
Yeah, would that be your go-to?
I think 550 would be my go-to because if I'm really down on my luck and can't find a lighter, can't find a ferro rod, I can use that 550 to create a bow drill and create a friction fire.
Oh, that's a good one.
But
Yeah,
there's a lot more that I can do with it too.
and I like what was that other? I forget. We had the name of it. It's in one of our episodes, but there's that 550 cord that's like that prepper's cord where it's not just the 7 strands inside. It's got one of them is like a wick, one of them is a piece of fishing line, and then you've got these other cords, and you have the jacket.
The Shomer Tech survival cord.
Is that what it is? Yeah,
Yep.
and it's like it's 550 cord on steroids, but yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, making I personally, I don't know if you've ever done the bow drill thing. I don't think I've ever made fire from anything other than something that's designed to make fire, like a ferro rod or a flint and steel. Or I've got a really cool, it's kind of a handmade magnesium, you know, ferro rod fire starter that I take with me when I go backpacking. But I don't think I've ever tried to do like the bow drill. I think I've done the magnifying glass thing before for sure. I've started fires that way, but most of the non-tradish stuff, you know, I'm a Bic lighter dude.
I like the Bic lighters too. And you don't have to refill them like Zippos. They light almost continually and forever as long as you don't get mud in there and you're good.
You know, something I picked up recently. This is something that I think it's Exotac makes. They make like some kind of cool high end ferro rod stuff, but Exotac makes it's a jacket for a Bic lighter, like a little rubber sleeve that a Bic lighter goes into. And it's got a little rubber top. And what that does is it actually holds down the little safety button. So
Oh, nice.
so you don't have to hold it down with your hand. So you can actually like set it down lit like you would like a Zippo, which is like the one thing that I like about a Zippo. And so they have this little rubber jacket that goes over your Bic lighter and flips over the top if you want it to. And then you can actually just have the button depressed and keep that flame going and not have to have your hold it down with your finger, which is kind of cool.
You don't burn yourself. You get a little candle,
Yeah,
little
you got
mood lighting.
a little big candle, little yeah. So anyway, I don't you know, I don't know what mine would be. I think that I like that 550 cord, kind of the 550 cord on steroids. Mine may be honestly there's probably a Grim card that I would like. Probably one of the signature cards. The Joe Flowers signature card is pretty good. There's a couple of them from the like people that have won alone that have like snare triggers built in and a little more fishing stuff. The Joe Flowers card is a little more bushcrafty backcountry versus the you know finding food and starting fires. But there's definitely a Grim card that I probably could get all of my all of my tools in one little card the size of a credit card.
I love it. So, next question came from Andrew, and this was primarily targeted at Joe. But how much do your survival courses usually cost, and can civilians be a part of them? And Joe's response was the cost varies with different locations. They can be river excursions and classes as low as $300 on the New River of North Carolina and Virginia, all the way to $3,800 for an 11-day trip to the Amazon jungles of Peru, Brazil, and Colombia. Anybody can purchase and come along. We are updating the websites this year to show excursions like a relaxed trip in the Amazon jungle and El Salvador Island trips in 2026. So, always expanding. If you want a once in a lifetime vacation opportunity, that's a hell of a deal for
Yeah, just
$3,800.
barefoot with Joe Flowers in the jungle of Peru or Brazil for a while. That'd be kind of cool. So yeah, I guess I haven't looked that much into Joe's courses. Like when he says the river excursion as low as $300. So I wonder if that's a multi-day thing, or if they just go down the river one day, if they stay overnight, if they hang out. You know, if they're getting off the boat and doing some bushcrafty stuff, or if they're just fishing. I'd like to know. I'd like to know kind of what's involved in that. That's kind of cool. It is a big range, obviously, but it sounds like it's sort of a build your own adventure with Joe Flowers kind of thing.
And I think the $300 one was like a weekend excursion,
Oh,
but
okay.
that's still not bad. I mean, go hang out on a river and learn some things for $300 for a weekend. I'll take
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. I didn't even see that question from him, but that's really cool that we'll have to stay up on Joe's website, and obviously we will post links to Bushcraft Global and all the other websites that Joe maintains there. But yeah, for sure, that's awesome. I'd love to go. That'd be fun. That'd be really fun.
Yeah, for real. Next question here is from Micah, and it says, "How would you approach bushcrafting in an area with very limited wood supplies, like if you were in a tundra or desert?" And Joe said, "Great question. I only have limited experiences in the desert, and living there can be hard. Trying to read the environment for resources like natural shelters and devets and crevices where water may be pooled become important. I don't go to tundra areas much specifically due to the fact that there aren't that many animals and habitats there."
And it is crazy that there are people that do live and have lived in those environments. Like he was when Joe was telling us about the reindeer farmers up in Scandinavia, that's just a absolutely vicious environment, and they live out in the middle of this Arctic winter area with nothing but a reindeer to keep them company. That's it's crazy that people do live in those kinds of environments because they're just so harsh.
And I don't know what's worse, a reindeer or a tauntaun, when you've got to split one open with your lightsaber.
Yeah, when you got to cut open the lightsaber and climb inside. Yeah, that's right. I don't know. I mean, definitely the reindeer's edible. That tauntaun didn't look edible. Uh,
Anything is edible if you're hungry enough.
that's right. Anything is edible if you're hungry
Joe taught us
enough.
that for sure.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
Next question. This one comes from Shane, and it says, "Okay, your house catches fire and is completely up in flames, but the family is not home. You only have one chance to go back in and grab one bushcraft, woodcraft survival tool. Caches and full backpacks not included. What tool do you grab and why that particular tool?" And before we jump into Joe's answer, I want to know what your answer is, AC.
Man, that's actually a really good one. It's yeah, so the one tool, I've got a pretty decent knife collection, and uh when I'm backpacking, there is one knife that I do carry with me, and it's a Fox Knives, which is an Italian knife company. They're a mid-level, kind of um survivally knife, and I think they make all kinds of stuff. They make folding knives and all that as well. But my Fox knife that I carry, and it's kind of a on your waist, tied to your leg thing. I like it because it's got kind of a recurve blade with a couple of different planes in it, and then a serrated blade on the back. And so this knife is like a really capable chopping tool. And this is something that Joe taught us: is having like the knife, the machete, and the axe. This is kind of a sort of a weird all three in one type tool. So the blade itself is maybe maybe 10 or 12 inches. So it's a decent size for like a fixed blade knife. But having that recurve blade on it, you can certainly chop with it. I can chop little branches pretty easily. And having that, the way that blade is shaped, you can do some hand planing with it that I like. And then it has obviously a serrated blade. It's got like a G10 handle. Now here's the kicker, is that one in particular does come with this cool little like survival kit. So I think I'm kind of skating Shane's question a little bit, because it's not really cachet, it's not a full backpack, but it does, the knife itself does have like a little tin. Think about something maybe 2 or 3 times the size of an Altoid tin that came with the knife, and it's got, like your standard little first aid kit. It's got a little, emergency mirror thing in it. It's got a pen and some write in the rain paper and stuff like that. So it's got kind of a little more of a survival kit in it, and that's generally my go to backcountry backpacking knife. So that's naturally probably the one thing I would grab in the category of toolcraft slash firecraft that he's asking about. What would you go for?
It's a tough call, but if we're looking at edged tools, edged weapons, I think I would have to scoop up my ACB, which is a uh, Bushmaster Firearms Company. When they came out with the ACR rifle, they created the ACB, the Adaptive Combat Bayonet, to go with it. And it's a standard size bayonet, but it is all cold rolled steel, and it's actually low carbon steel, so it doesn't have the same brittleness. But it's got a double sawback. It has your bayonet adapting mount. It has a reversible grip, so if you need it that way or this way, depending if you want to run with the blade up or the blade back, the grip you can reverse it. But it's just a solid piece of steel that you can do a whole lot with. And yeah, skirting the question a little bit, I do keep it in the Kydex holster that it came with, which is a Velcro back, so it has its own little survival kit. It's got a ferro rod and a sharpening stone attached to the not a sheath for it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could grab that whole sheath, yeah, I'm skirting the question a little bit, but it's all one kind of unit, one piece that I'm grabbing. But I could do just about anything with that. It does have that traditional bayonet edge, so it's flat along one side, and then when you get up towards the tip, it does curve backwards, so you have a little bit more flexibility there. It does have the blood grooves, so
Yeah, sure.
if you're using it as a pig sticker on the end of a spear, you're not sticking your knife in there and never getting it back. I think I'd probably have to go with my ACB.
And now does that have like does the sheath on that turn into the wire cutter thing like we talked about before? Does that one do that or not?
It does. So
It
it
does.
does have
Okay.
the wire cutter notch,
Yep.
which it's not. When you say wire cutter, bayonets were never designed for electrical work.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
that
this
kind
is
of
for
wire.
it's for taking a fence down, really, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's what it's
it's
taking
going through
barbed wire
chain
out.
link.
Yeah, chain link. Yeah. But keep in mind now, if you had access to take apart a chicken wire type fence, or that kind of fencing, a chain link fence or something, now you can make quite a few tools out of that fencing material, right? If you could get big long pieces of galvanized metal, I think there's probably a lot of bushcrafty uses for that if you could find yourself a fence.
There's a ton that you could do with it, and depending
Yep.
on how much, you could set up your entire shelter that way,
Right?
and then put logging and mud and sticks, and I mean,
Yeah.
you can create a hut out of it with that as your framework. But
Yeah, making little metal zip ties and wire ties and stuff.
kind of depends if I'm allowed to get away with taking the sheath with me or not.
I think you are. You definitely are. That's what he say specifically, caches and full backpacks. No, I think that one goes. Yeah, you get the sheath for sure. What was Joe's answer to that?
So Joe said he would probably be picking up one of his sentimental machetes or possibly a large tarp to start gathering anything he could. which
Ooh,
makes sense.
that's interesting. That's an interesting one. Yeah. So he just go and grab the tarp, and then he'll start grabbing other stuff. Which that's kind of cheating. That's sort of like that's like having your first wish of the genie be more wishes, isn't it? You know, like you're like I'm just gonna get a tarp, and then I'm gonna get all the stuff you said I couldn't get earlier. But I get where he's going with that. That's good forethought on Joe. And yes, he says sentimental machetes. I bet Joe has like he told us. I mean, he has machetes that are hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. You know, like Joe
Yep.
has some, he's got like a legit, he probably has more money or at least value in one machete than I have in my entire knife collection.
I don't doubt that at all for
Yeah.
me.
Well,
He's got some pretty impressive hardware.
that's a good one because he made us think. I like that. So Shane's definitely getting one of these, one of our Joe Flowers cards, right?
I would agree.
Yeah. He made us think. I like that. What else do you have?
So this one came from Forrest.
Okay.
Uh, what is the worst injury a bushcrafter can get? How long is the longest you have been down with an injury? This one I found very interesting how Joe answered it because I've cut myself, I've nicked myself, I've bled a lot. But what Joe said is most injuries can occur from tool use when in a standard bushcraft style class or trip. I've cut my foot open with a machete much longer than I was used to. I cut the extensor tendon on my left foot and had to get surgery. I was down for about 3 months or so.
Holy crap. I would have never thought that. That's crazy.
And if you do that and you don't have access to modern day medical care, you're fucked.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and what did Joe tell us? He said that basically all of your bushcrafty type knife axe injuries are going to happen on the opposite side of your handedness. So if you're right-handed, you're most likely, I'm guessing that was if Joe was right-handed, that was probably his left foot, like because
Yeah, he said that the crossing pattern when you're
right.
hacking at stuff or when you slip, you're
Yep.
crossing your body, so your opposite side from your dominant is where you're going to have the most injuries.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a big one. Yeah, you're right. If you didn't have access to medical care and you had one of these bushcrafty injuries, oh, that would be terrible. I
A,
couldn't even
a
imagine.
contingency medical kit is only going to take you so far when surgery is needed, but it
Yeah,
could
that's
be the difference between life and death to get to that surgery.
yeah, that's right. And yeah, I mean, at some point you're just running out of blood. And what was the other thing Joe told us? He said the tourniquet was one of his most valuable, useful sort of prepper pieces of first aid that people don't think about because you can use a tourniquet not just when you're bleeding out, but when you just fillet yourself really good and you're just trying to like get at the wound and see how bad it is. Just having a tourniquet to just slow it down enough to be like, all right, now I can see what's going on in my finger. Let's move this flap of skin back or whatever. That was actually one of the most valuable pieces of information that I picked up from Joe because I would have never thought about that. I mean, I have tourniquets. I've never used one. I would only use one if I thought I was like losing a limb, but it makes sense that yeah, you just slow the blood down enough so you can work on yourself. That's huge.
Absolutely. So, next question. These two came from Zach. So, we're going to take these one at a time. Uh, but we will answer both. Was there a specific event in your life that made you decide to take your endeavor to help other people? And if there was, please describe it.
And did Joe answer this one?
He did.
Okay.
He said, probably when I saw how much our work helps with the Matisse tribe. We get to see some of the last of their traditions as they try to adapt to a new environment, and sometimes the simplest trips can help them. That
And
means a
the
lot.
Yeah, and the Matisse, that was the very late contact tribe, I think in Brazil? Was it in Brazil?
I, Brazil or Peru?
Brazil or Peru? Yeah, I can't. But anyway, yes, the Matisse. They probably don't honestly recognize borders.
I don't think they do.
Like I mean, yeah, yeah, they probably didn't have country borders. But yeah, so the Matisse tribe was one of those late contact tribes that Joe spent a lot of time with. That's really cool. And what was was there another question that Zach had for?
Who would you consider to be your role model for what you know now about survival and why? And Joe answered Steve Watts of the Shaley Museum, who passed away in 2016. He was very astute as a student of survival and was always a gentleman with a kind heart.
I don't know. Steve Watts. I'll have to look him up.
I'm going to have to look him up too, because I'm not familiar with his work, but I think it does go to show that you can draw inspiration from anywhere, anyone. Um, you know, I don't know that there was a specific event that really made me want to get into this podcast and kind of spreading the message of general preparedness and things like that. Was there for you at all?
I guess it's interesting for me. It's kind of a story with, that does involve you, Chris, but I don't know. I guess maybe this is the time we tell the story. But really, like for me, I've, worked in and around, big government for a number of years and kind of seen sort of the government planning side of stuff. And I'm a bit of a homesteader. We've talked about my background a little bit. But I personally always enjoyed writing, but I would never write a book. I know Chris, you're a more talented writer than I am, but I do enjoy like essays and things like that. And I had written an essay on a survival a preparedness website basically about just sort of big government stuff, what ultimately turned into our episode 3. And I wouldn't say it was a specific event. It was more along the lines of me having a lot of knowledge that I wouldn't say is secret or classified, but knowledge that I think a lot of people aren't exposed to. And when I talked to my friends about it, they were like, this is really cool. Like you should write essays, you should write books or, talk about this stuff. And for me, I don't know. I just didn't have the wherewithal to do that. And Chris, you had actually you saw that essay and said, well, somebody should start a fucking podcast about this. and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that's and that's kind of how it happened. And Chris, you did a lot of the work because you put the podcast part of it together. You put the tech together and got us here in the studio and all this kind of stuff. But for me, I don't know if it was a specific event. It was just more the culmination of my experiences that enough people were like, man, the way you have sort of this inside baseball on how government preparedness works, and you should just talk about this. So I guess this was the outlet for that. This was the ultimate culmination of that for me.
Yeah, that's kind of, we have not actually met in person.
That's right. I bet no
Uh,
one knows that.
we do this entirely remotely, and our guests have been entirely remote so far. Um, Obviously, if that changes, we will let you guys know, and it'll be a super special episode.
Be a good
But
episode.
I think it would be cool to record an entire episode while you're flying around, and we just piddle around and do some recon
I think
work.
the airplane episode would be very cool.
It's just going to be
Yeah.
for an hour. Nobody's going to be able to understand us. I don't think there was a specific event. I've always been into kind of uh, the lore behind Fallout and video games and The Last of Us and things like that. And 28 Days Later, and how do you make something so bad that society as a whole can't recover from? And then what do you do to actually recover? Because in the post-apocalyptic movies and films and TV shows that we all see, there are people that survived. So how did they get to that point? And that's what I wanted to learn. And that's kind of been a driving force since I was a kid.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was trying to looking at this question, and that's a great question from Zach. But looking at this question that he had asked was, I was thinking about my childhood, and I was like, man, was there like an event in my childhood? Because I think I've always been like a prepper. We called it a survivalist back then, right? But even as a child, I remember like having like a tackle box full of like my pocket knives and first aid kits and things like that. And I remember that my parents, we were very outdoorsy. We would camp and we would hike and things like that. And I remember them never being prepared, but I don't remember anything bad ever happening. Like there wasn't like a time when I was like, oh man, we were stuck on the side of the road and couldn't change a tire. Like I don't remember having anything bad happening, but I do in retrospect remember being always very unprepared, like, and I'm probably armed with terrible advice too. I'm sure my parents were like, well, if you get lost in the woods, just like hug a tree or ask your teacher or policeman for help or something, like I don't like I don't, but I just don't remember a specific time. But so what's the next, the other question, the part two of that is he said something about, yeah, who'd you consider your role model about survival? Do you have one, Chris?
I have a role model, but not for survival, just general life. And this is something that he probably doesn't realize he's my role model. His name is J.L. Taylor. He wrote a book called No Shit, Here I Am. And he was my very first squad leader when I was a brand new private arriving in Hawaii. And he said something one time that has stuck with me ever since then. And I don't even know if he remembers saying it, but he said, always carry yourself as if you're fighting for somebody because you may not know who you're fighting for.
Oh, I've heard you say that before.
And that one just, it stuck. I don't know why. It was
Hmm.
right after we were getting the dog shit smoked out of us for something that somebody did and screwed up. But he said that and it just kind of resonated. And I've always since then tried to do the best that I can so that, I'm carrying on that fight for somebody who I don't even know.
That's interesting. I don't know if I necessarily have, a role model for what I know about survival, but I would say that I've read a lot of books, from the like the 1 second after type stuff and the more apocalyptic things. And one author that I've had a little interaction with, is John Wesley Rawls. And I really like, I don't know if you've read any of his stuff. And, I would say that I would caution anybody that he is very religious. Most of his stuff has sort of a very religious overtone, but I really like his style of writing. It's very simple, it's very pragmatic. He has an army background. Um he was like a battalion S2 type guy, so he was an intelligence guy. And what I liked about his writing style in just his books is he does this very cool thing where he actually drops actionable intelligence in the books, but in a storyline. So, he would talk about, maybe they'd be talking about ham radios, and then he would explain why this group in this fictional book uses a specific wavelength and a specific band of ham radio because it's harder to direction find, or because, higher frequencies have more atmospheric skip, or those kinds of things. And he would always drop actionable intelligence into the story as part of the story. And I really do like that. And he has a blog, a daily blog. I think it's called Survivor Blog or Survivor's Blog, which is just kind of his daily thoughts. And he's a little apocalyptic. I like that, in his version of events, in his stories, he's got 4 or 5 books, and they're all just sort of continuations, maybe not quite sequels, more like kind of overlappy. And in his version of how shit hits the fan, it's economic collapse. It's kind of like hyperinflation of the American dollar. And I don't know if I necessarily think that's more realistic of a Teotihuacan event, but it certainly seems, it seems a little plausible. And I like that it's not a zombie invasion, it's not a asteroid, it's not, you know dragons attacking. It's something that's a little more maybe plausible. And so I just like the way that's kind of how his stories start. That was the one thing. But yeah, I do like him. If you check out his blog, his daily blog is very good. It's he just kind of has like his daily survivor notes. It's not like, oh, it's the end of the world again. I don't think he catastrophizes that much. But yeah, he was one of the first authors I kind of started reading in this genre, and I really liked a lot of his stuff.
So he's not, World War Z by Max Brooks
Right.
or Lucifer's Hammer or anything like
Right.
that. It's practical, and
Yeah.
yes, there is something in it that you can learn from. I
Right.
I love books like that. There's actually a series by an author called Kate Gilronan. Um, there, she she wrote a book called Prepper, and then the sequel Survivalist, and they are young adult novels. So, if that's not your style, then there's no requirement to read it, but it should be on your reading list, in my opinion, because there is a ton of actionable intel in there, including all the way down to what percentage of bleach do you have and how many drops do you need to add into your water supply.
Right.
So that's something that I never thought of seeing in a book, especially a nonfiction book, but it's there and it's true. It's backed by the science. It matches what the CDC says for sterilization of water, and we'll have links to all of these, especially the No Shit Here I Am by J.L.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor. That one is a nonfiction book, and it is very intense at points because it does go into real time combat and the thoughts processing through his head as he's being shot at.
Oh, wow.
So it's an intense book, but it was a very very good read, and um, things like that you're not necessarily going to get all of the information that you need to survive from us. You have to go outside of your own box and your own comfort zone to learn what you can.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good point. So was that all of them? Did we have other? Was that all our questions?
Those are the
Did we
ones
miss
that
any?
made the cut. I think our winners here. Who do
Yeah,
you
we said
think?
Shane gets one. Zach went out of his way. Zach asked a lot of questions. Oh, wait, we missed some of Zach. What'd he say? He said there was
Oh,
something
he
else.
gave us a bonus question. When do we
Yeah.
get to hear about zombies?
When do we get to hear about zombies? I don't know if I have a zombie episode in me. And I would I a couple of things. I believe that if you're prepared for the things that we talk about, then you are prepared for a zombie invasion. I don't think we need to talk about it. If you prepare the way that that we prepare and the way that we're talking about, if I think that you are already prepared for the zombie invasion. But also, zombie apocalypse is not on my risk matrix. I don't know about you, Chris. It's not on there.
It's on there, but it doesn't rate very high. I think if we're going to do a zombie episode, we've got to wait until 28 years later comes out and then
There you
tear
go.
apart the entire series.
Okay, so that's a good question for you, though. So, in the zombie genre, which kind of zombies would you rather? Would you rather the zombies that are slow moving but live forever? Or would you rather like the 28 days style zombie that are like super agile and can run really fast, but they will eventually die? Or like the World War Z zombies that are kind of like, you know, the sort of best of both worlds or worst of both worlds? Like, do you have a zombie that you would rather have to fight, or the Last of Us zombie maybe?
Oh, hell no on The Last of Us.
No,
Um, absolutely not. But I have always liked the theory of taking on the 28 days later zombies.
me
Yes, they are a
too.
lot faster,
Yep.
but they can be killed via conventional means.
Yeah, exactly. You can shoot them in the knees, right? Like, I think that's the if
Yep.
I had to fight a zombie, that would be the zombie. I think that would be the easiest to protect from. And like you said, yeah, they're a lot faster, they're a lot more agile, they're not going to be slowed down by a chain link fence or something, but I think I think they would be a lot easier to defend against in general, probably.
I don't know, you're going to have a rough time of it any way you slice it.
Yeah.
That's a tough call, but
Yep.
I really appreciated how in the second one, 28 weeks later, they actually killed them with chemical weapons.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
that's when you see Jeremy Renner, he's pushing the
Yeah.
car and he doesn't make it out because
Yeah.
that chemical weapon did the same thing to him, but it
They
saved those
they
kids.
gassed them and then they lit them on fire, right? I think that was how that worked in that one. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, either way it'd be tough to defend against, but yeah, I do like the idea that they probably are easier to take out. So, Zach, that is probably as much as you're going to hear about zombies from us probably. I don't have a
More
zombie
than
episode.
likely.
I don't have a zombie episode in me, man, but okay, so I'm sending Zach a card. Who else? Who you you pick the last one. Who else gets a card?
Let's see. We did Zach, we did Shane.
Yeah, Shane got one.
I would say we do Forrest with the worst injury, because that's something that nobody wants to deal with. And if you can protect yourself and learn how to not slice your own foot off, that's
Yep.
probably a benefit.
Yeah, and Forrest is like he's probably our super fan. Forrest really he's helped us out a lot. He's the first one to, like, love, share anything we post. He truly is our probably our super fan. So I appreciate everything Forrest does. Of course he's going to ask a question because he's the super fan of the show. So yeah, Forrest definitely. But any of these people, so anybody that didn't get a Joe Flowers card, I think we should still send them our standard stakeholder prepping prize pack. What do you say?
I would say absolutely. And the really, really cool thing about these cards that you're going to get, we're going to put together a video as quickly as we can. So hopefully it releases on YouTube the same day that this episode releases. These
Yep.
cards are actually really, really cool and multifunctional, and we designed them. It's got a scale, it's got a straight edge, it's got a red light filter, it's got a flashlight diffuser. It's
And
cool.
our Spotify code on it. So
It does.
which
So
is
you can actually
which is kinda
show
cool.
our Spotify code
Right.
to somebody at the gas station who has that flat tire and be like, "Hey, have you listened to Stakeholder Prepping?
Yeah.
You should probably learn a thing or two."
You should probably listen to episode 25 with Forrest and get some tips and tricks on how to change your tire, and then you won't have to sit here with me and listen to this dumb podcast. So yeah, and so I guess we will reach out to those that we can or remember to get addresses, but anybody else who heard your name that didn't already get something cool, I think Paul and Kathy, we already sent them something, but anybody else, if you heard your name, please reach out and we'll send you some cool stuff.
Send us a message on Facebook, Stakeholder Prepping. You can always get in touch with us at stakeholderprepping@gmail.com
Mm-hmm.
or visit our website, stakeholderprepping.com. We've got all the links, we've got all the episodes, all of the intelligence right there in one easy to use website. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the website, we got to use the plug. These are other comments and questions we didn't read, but how often do we hear from people either that comment on one of your YouTube videos or comment on some Facebook posts that we made, and they're always like, or even on Spotify, where they're like, "Oh man, where do I find the stuff you're talking about?" And it's like, I don't know how many more times we can say this. We maintain a blog. There's links to everything. It's, again, not easy. It's us doing all of this work. So, yeah, please go to stakeholderprepping.com, click on the blog link. All of the stuff we talk about is there. Anything we can remember, at least. And if you don't see it there, then obviously you can reach out to us via Facebook Messenger or stakeholderprepping@gmail.com, and we answer every one of those.
absolutely. Well, I think that's about going to wrap up this episode. We really do appreciate the support and the questions. And if you didn't get yours in this episode, don't give up. Send us something and we will see about a future episode, because this was a lot of fun. I think we're going to do this a few times.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
But until then, and next week, when we see you back for the next part of our little adventure here, remember that you are your own stakeholder.